Hi, this is Aaron from Cirrus Logic Software. In this demo, I'm going to talk about something that I don't feel has gotten very much attention, but tends to be a very common problem that I'm sure a lot of FileMaker developers face from time to time. The problem I'm referring to is an efficient user interface for entering data into time fields. FileMaker, of course, gives us the pop-down calendar option for entering dates, but it doesn't supply us with any method for efficiently entering time values. Here I've put together a few examples of what I consider unintuitive options for entering data into time fields. First, we have the most basic option of creating a giant value list of all the hours in a 24-hour period in 15-minute increments. Now this option is fairly simple to create, but the problem is that the user is faced with this giant scrolling list of values that they have to find the time they're looking for to select it. Again, fairly simple to create, but from the user standpoint, not very efficient. Next, we have the option of creating 3 different fields for hours, minutes, and the meridian value. Again, very simple to create this, but now you're forcing the user to click multiple times to enter a time value. Simple to create, not very efficient from the user standpoint. Then there's the scenario where you need to have both 12 and 24-hour formats available based on what the user has selected. This may be because you're integrating into another software, using this data in a website that uses some JavaScript that requires 24-hour formats, or whatever the case may be. There are a few ways you can do this, such as with custom functions or complex calculations. In this case, I've created a table which contains both 12 and 24-hour formats. The 12-hour format is supplied to display to the user, and in the background I can easily retrieve the 12-hour format for the value that the user has selected. I actually had to use this method for a project I was working on because of the requirements of the project. Not too complex to create, but it does take quite a while to build the data table. So there's 3 ways that you can accomplish the task, but to me, none of them are very user intuitive, and you may end up having users complain about the cumbersome aspect of any of these options. So how do we go about solving this when FileMaker itself doesn't give us any native user interface tools for time value entry? This is where honing your web skills can really pay off in the long run. Now don't be afraid if you're not a web developer. The method I'm about to show you is quite simple to implement, and I'm going to show you step by step exactly how to do that. Also, if you visit the accompanying blog article for this video at cirruslogicsoftware.com, I have included a demo file that is free to download and use however you see fit. Now let's see how I solve this problem. As some of you may know, I'm a big fan of JavaScript and jQuery and using those technologies in FileMaker to improve user interface and user interactions. So naturally, I began the hunt for a great jQuery plugin. What I found was a really awesome jQuery plugin called Clockpicker. This is probably one of the best UI tools I have found for time value entry. It's very lightweight, uses Bootstrap and jQuery libraries, and is fully mobile capable and cross-browser compatible, even with Internet Explorer. It also offers many features such as callbacks and event triggers, which makes it ultra flexible, especially in our FileMaker environment. So I have my time field in FileMaker, and I'm ready to implement the Clockpicker interface. The first step is to download the code repository and open up the zip file. You can preview the Clockpicker demo page by opening up the index.html file in your web browser. Next, we will need to compile the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, and Bootstrap libraries all into one document. So I'm going to start by opening up the index.html file in Dreamweaver and removing all the elements from this page that I don't need. I'm going to use the Clockpicker with callback sample and modify it to my liking. You can see here which CSS files need to be compiled into the HTML. And here you can see the JavaScripts that will need to be compiled as well. I'm going to open each of these CSS and JavaScript files, copy the content, and paste them into my HTML file. As I paste each one of these, I'm going to remove the external script reference just so I don't duplicate anything. Now I need to modify the clock picker to look and function the way that I need to for FileMaker. So I would like to control the clock picker with a button in FileMaker rather than using the web-based field and button. The way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to create a popover button in FileMaker, and in the popover I'm going to have a web viewer that will show my clock picker. I don't want to see the input field or the button, so I'm going to make the input a hidden input rather than a text input, and I'm going to remove the button altogether. In order for our clock picker to communicate with FileMaker, our input needs to be in a form. Then we will need to adjust the callbacks to submit the data to an FMP URL that will call a script in FileMaker and pass our value. I want the clock picker to show permanently, so I'm going to add a jQuery snippet here to display the clock picker when the page loads. I'm going to use the after done callback to grab our time data and submit our form to FileMaker. Now we're ready to go over to FileMaker, create our popover, and write the scripts. I'm going to create a popover button which will hold our web viewer. I'm going to create a web viewer inside of our popover. And I'm just going to remove the address for now. I'm going to copy the code that we just compiled, and I'm going to paste it into a text object on my layout and give my text object the name code. You will notice that the text object extends past the layout's bounds. A simple trick here is to just change the height in the position inspector. Now we can change the object name to the word code. I'm going to change the address of our web viewer to a data URL and reference the content of the text object and give it an object name of clockpicker. I'm going to adjust the size and colors so that it looks more like native FileMaker. For the scripts, I have two here. One that is called by the callback in the clock picker, and it sets the field in FileMaker. The other resets the clock picker web viewer. On the popover, I'm going to use an onObjectEnter trigger to call the reset script. The other script will just live here in the file, waiting to be called by the web viewer. Now let's see how it works. And there you have it, a much more intuitive way to set time field values in FileMaker by leveraging web technologies. I hope you find this useful. Please visit the blog page to get the free download file. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.